I think the greatest Christian record of all time is this year's model.
Wow.
I mean, at least it is for me.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's the perfect record. And when did that come out? Like
87.
87. Okay. And it was late 80s, mid to late 80s.
I joined the Imperials in 86, and we had started working on the record, and then it came out in early 87.
Well, it blew my mind. I mean, Fallen was one of the most unique things I'd heard in Christian music up to that point. And you just the way you and Jimmy came in and changed what was already an amazing group of, what an amazing few albums, with Russ and those guys.
Sure.
And
Terry and Sherman.
Yeah. Even going back before that.
Yeah.
And but what you guys brought to it was just, to me, as a young musician, and 87, I was 22 years old.
Okay.
And just getting my start in Christian music, being on the Truth bus back in the day.
I didn't know you were in Truth.
Oh, yeah, that's how I got my start. That's how 4Him got their start, was in Truth. But again, your voice was just like, whoa, okay, that's a mountain to climb for me. Like that's somebody I want to aspire to be. You've always been a vocal hero of mine.
Well, thank you.
Artistry, just watching your career, goals for me, just sitting here with you is just a real treat. So welcome to the 1 Degree of Andy podcast, Ron
Thank
Hemby.
you. I'm happy to be here.
Man,
so
I know you got some stories. But
got a few.
Yeah. So let's get into them. I mean, again, I kind of want to let's start there with this year's model.
Okay.
That was the first album you did with the Imperials?
It was, yes.
Yeah. And then you did 2 more after that?
Did 2.
Yeah, so Free the Fire.
3 total.
Free the Fire is a great record. I think gets a little overlooked in that run.
I feel like that too.
Yeah.
That's actually, of those 2 records that Jimmy and I did, that I love them. I can't say that I love one more than the other. I love them both for different reasons. And this year's model, I replaced Jim Murray, which was, when I auditioned, I went to Arman's house, and there was a guy that had taken Paul Smith's place, Danny Ward.
Yeah.
And that didn't ended up not being in the group before we started the record. We had already been in pre-production with him on some things, and things changed. And then I brought Jimmy. Let me just step back. So I had been on the road with Russ, for like a year and a half, singing backup. And toward the end of that tour, it was the Metals tour. Toward the end of '85, I was there from.
And I saw you. I mean, I didn't know you then, but I saw Russ on that tour at Waco Hall on the Baylor University campus in Waco, Texas. That was one of the first Christian concerts I ever went to.
Okay.
Yeah. So you probably were there.
If it was in '85, I was. Yeah.
Yeah. 84 or 85.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like I remember playing there. We played a lot of places in Texas.
Oh,
in fact, the first I was living in Fort Worth, and when I was 17, I started traveling with a group called the Pierces, just a husband and wife team. They hired me for the summer to play bass for them.
And how did you get in that group?
Do you remember a Southern gospel group called the Magruder's?
Yeah, I do.
Carol Magruder. Carol was like a family friend. His parents and my parents and the pastor and his wife, where I grew up in Missouri, they were real close friends. In fact, Carol's aunt was my pastor's wife. His mom, and they were twin sisters. So anyways, Carol was like a family friend. I mean, like a family, really.
Yeah.
And he was a pastor at a church in Indiana at the time. And the Pierces they'd sing at his church, and they were looking for somebody to go out with them for the summer to play bass. And he said, well, I know this kid in Missouri, And so they called me up and came by the little town where I live. We went to the church and sat down with my bass, and so I went out with them for the summer. And we had been, I was trying to remember the other day. Maybe like 6 months in to me being there. I ended up staying with them for a long time.
Yeah.
We had sang at a church in Carrollton, Texas.
Yeah.
And Sunday night, and we were leaving Monday. Spent the night and leaving Monday morning. So I was getting my stuff together. I was in the shower and I was singing in the shower. Singing "Bridge Over Troubled Water" in the shower, and so I get my stuff together and get on the bus, and Jimmy goes, "Hey, Ron, I'll talk to you for a second." I'm thinking, God, well, did I do something? I said, "Everything?" He said, "Oh, no, everything's fine." I said, "Becky and I heard you singing in the shower." I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you could hear me." And he's like, "No, that's okay. We didn't know you could sing."
Oh my goodness.
I said, "Well, you never asked me." So we got sat down that next day or so and started, seeing.
Did you know you could sing?
Oh yeah.
I mean, because that is a surprise to some people. I mean that.
No, I grew up singing in church.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, being 4 or 5 years old and standing in front of the pulpit singing, whatever.
Yeah.
And, I sang with my mom and dad, my aunt and uncle. And, I mean, this is a very musical family on my mom's side of the family, particularly. There's tons of cousins. We'd go to my grandmother's house on Sunday afternoon, sit around the old piano and sing hymns, you know, and harmonies. And that's where I learned to sing harmony. And so, but yeah, I ended up being with them for like 8 years, and so I, got married in the process, and I was just, man, I feel like I was in my time. I needed to do other things. I was starting to feel that way.
Yeah.
And so I was living in Fort Worth at the time, and a friend of mine, Deb Manning, who lived in Texarkana, her and her husband, Hoss, they got to know them just singing at their church. And she called me up one day, and she was singing backup for Russ at the time. I knew Russ from years ago, and it was Deb and Bonnie Keene.
Oh, wow.
And
love Bonnie.
Bonnie's awesome. And so Bonnie had just started First Call. And she had needed to take off to do that, so they were looking for somebody else to take her place. So just as hey, could you come out and fill in some date? We're making a swing down through Texas. Could you go out and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. So I went up to Texarkana. We spent the afternoon just going over vocal parts, and then the bus came through, hopped on the bus, and did 3 dates with Russ in Texas, and then a few more dates popped up. Hey, can you come out and do this? So, it kind of appeared to me that was, even though I was making a much better living doing what I was doing, it was a huge sacrifice to stop that and go to work for Russ. And Russ had a big band. Nobody made any money. Yeah. It was very tight, very tight.
Well, kind of typical Christian music, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the big picture of things.
And so, I did that for a while. I did that. We ended up doing the Medals tour and all that. Wow. And it was me and Lisa Bevel and Deb.
Oh, wow. I've had Lisa on. I just love her.
Lisa's awesome. Man. She's my neighbor. We live in the same neighborhood. Yeah.
No way. Tell her hi when next time you see her.
I will. I'll never see her, but we live in the same neighborhood. I know we have. But, so at the end of that tour, it was October, and we were kind of winding down for the year. And we were playing in Jacksonville, and Russ came to me that evening after we got on the bus and was headed back to Nashville. He said, I talked to Arman Morales today, and Jim Murray is leaving the Imperials, and he's looking for somebody to take his place. And he said, I think it'd be a great opportunity. First, he said, I think you'd be great in that situation. It'd be a great opportunity for you. And, if you think you want to do that, I'm like, yeah, well, why wouldn't I?
Right.
Right.
And Corner's just a cornerstone group in the industry. Yeah.
I mean, and I grew up on those records.
Yeah.
Russ's records. I mean, all the way back to Terry and Sherman. Those, I love those early, that's kind of when it became a more of a contemporary thing with Terry and Sherman,
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so that's and I was a young teenager when those records came out too, and so we were headed back to Nashville, so we pulled into the Bellevue parking lot where we parked our bus, and Russ said, I'll call Arman this week and maybe try to get you guys together. I'm like, I'm going to have to call him and remind him, I'm thinking to myself, because he'll never remember to do that. And so we pulled in the parking lot, and it was getting our stuff off the bus and stuff, and the Imperials pulled in at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And they had played in Detroit the night before, and we just all kind of converged at the same time. And Russ goes, hey, look, there's the amps right there. I'll go get Arman and introduce you. I'm like, oh, okay. And my hair is all, when I had hair. And so Arman comes up.
Bunk hair.
Right,
or the bunk smell still all over, You haven't get off the...
And Russ's bus, at that time. There's a million stories just in that.
Oh, man.
But he went and got Arman and brought Arman over to the bus and introduced me. And I think it was the next week that I went over to his house and auditioned.
Wow.
And I walked in, I was just, nervous, and I looked at Arman, I said, and this is kind of how it went with them, with Arman and me particularly, because he was the guy.
Yeah. Arman, was he sole owner of the group at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he bought Jim out.
Okay.
And so I said, man, I'm no Jim Murray. He said, I don't want you to be Jim Murray. I want you to be Ron Hemby. And so and that's how it always was.
Did you know Jimmy Lee yet?
Oh yeah, I knew Jimmy, and I'd known him maybe a year or so.
Yeah,
and, peripherally. I mean, he played for the Imperials in the early '80s when Paul Smith was there as a bass player.
Oh, I guess I knew that.
Yeah, and wasn't there a long time.
Yeah.
And that's when Jackie came in to the Imperials. Jackie Street playing bass for the Imperials, and so I started with them in January of '86, and
did y'all go right into the studio when you, or did you just kind of pick up and go tour with them?
No, they were. Well, they were making changes.
Yeah.
Jim was leaving. They were trying to figure out what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Brown Bannister had produced "Let the Wind Blow," which is the record, Paul's last record. Yep. Paul left, and then Danny Ward came in and took Paul's place. And so we toured for a while with Danny. Probably, I'm going to say it was March or April of '86 when he left.
So did you have to sing all those Jim parts?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I could sing them then.
Yeah. I could too when I was 18.
It's funny, Andy. I look back at that stuff. I had no musical training whatsoever. I just learned how to sing. Just belting. And so I look back at that stuff and particularly the stuff on this year's model, Free the Fire, how high some of those notes
but
were.
We all did that, though.
I know.
We all did that, and when then, you'd hear the mix and go, oh, that sounds amazing, and then 5 minutes later you go, oh, man, I got to do that every night now.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that?
Yeah.
At least you guys had a live band. You could change, you could change keys if you needed to,
Didn't
but
do it,
didn't
man.
always work, though.
Didn't do it.
Yeah,
we did.
those keys are usually magic in the studio. It's like what?
I just jumped in there and did it.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And so Danny was leaving, and I talked to Jimmy Lee. We'd been kind of writing some songs together, trying to write something.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy had a demo tape. I said, man, you think you'd be interested in? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he gave me a demo tape to play for Arman, and it was the song "Get Ready."
Get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready.
And
wow.
the only difference between the demo tape and the record is the record was produced with thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But all those parts, Jimmy sang He was singing all those parts. It was
Wow.
pretty much the same arrangement, you
Yeah.
know. Then we brought in percussion and all that, you know, and you know, but yeah, that's why I played that for Arman, and Arman was like, "That's Jimmy Lee." Yeah, he's like, you know. So we brought him in, and we started pre-production on the. We'd already kind of been listening to songs.
Yeah.
"Wings of Love" was one of the first songs
Yeah.
that was presented to us, and so yeah, that's
What would have been the biggest hit off that record? Like
probably "Wings of
radio-wise?
Love."
Yeah.
That was number one for quite a while.
Because that was like, I remember hearing it the first time. That's like fifth or sixth or seventh on the record, right? Isn't it's kind of buried?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember going, "This is a great record. Wow, it's a great record." Next song, great record. He hit "Wings of Love." You're like, "Come on, man! Like seriously?" Like I'm still getting chills just remembering hearing it for the, you know, that first time. Just going, I can't believe there are very few records in my life that I have just been like, I got to the end of it and went, "You gotta be kidding me." I mean, "Rush of Blood to the Head," you know, Coldplay was one of those for me.
Right.
You know, that's the first thing that enters my mind. But these perfect records. But it was such a forward record, sonically.
Yeah.
And again, that was what was exciting, but also kind of like for me as young, 'cause, you know, I'm in Truth, and For Him hasn't quite started yet, and it's a little bit terrifying. Because I'm like, if this is where music is going in Christian music, I don't know if I'm prepared. I love it, but my musical brain's trying to figure out what you guys are doing. Going, I can't figure this out. It's kind of like that first Mr. record.
Oh, my
where
goodness.
I'm just like, how do you write songs like that? How do you like all those transitions and musical moments? I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now, but I love it.
Right.
And I think that's again why I keep coming back to that record over and over again.
You know, when Jimmy came in the group, it kind of changed everything. I mean, just we would have done a record. Brown was going to produce it, but just from a creative point of view, it changed everything. And he and I had a camaraderie already.
Yeah, you could tell.
And we just had a ball doing it, and there were no creative boundaries put on us. Murr wanted us to just do just do it, and be who you are.
Yeah. And who produced that? Was it
Brown?
Okay.
Brown Bannister.
Okay.
And we brought a guy in from London by the name of Nick Froome that mixed it.
Yeah.
Gary, who was I think an assistant maybe to Gary Langan, who did Yes and things like that.
Yeah.
Tried to get him to mix it, and he wasn't available. He said, "But use Nick." We flew him in.
Yeah, I remember when we hired Tom Lord Alge to mix on a couple of our albums, and it was a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
Where I mean, we loved the guys we'd worked with in the past, but man, you get a guy like Tom in, and it just there's this whole other thing that they bring to the table, and you can feel that.
Right. Yeah.
In this year's model. Yeah.
And
I'm sorry I'm harping on that record, but
no,
I have to start
it's
there
cool.
because it's such an emotional part of my journey.
It was such a departure from the Imperials, what they had done. You know, I think probably too much of a departure for a lot of people.
I agree.
You know, and there was a lot of old fans that hated it.
The record cover was weird.
Let us know that they hated it. Yeah. But you know, from just a fan perspective, our audience has changed overnight.
Interesting.
Overnight.
Yeah.
When that record came out and people started buying it, and it's "Wings of Love" was the first single, and it was so gangbusters when it first came out, and our crowds got bigger, got younger, way younger, and it was, you know, I'm like, looking back now, you know, we were doing the right thing.
Yeah, and that's so hard. I mean, it's so unusual for a band to be able to continue to recreate themselves, album after album, and find the audience. And it doesn't last forever, but you know what a gold mine that Arman found with you and Jimmy Lee to be able to get basically just sounds like they just kind of gave you the reins and went,
Did on that
go
record.
for it.
You know, for the most part.
Did they pull it back on Free the Fire a little bit?
Yeah, I think there was a conscious effort. I won't get into a lot of it.
You can if you want, but.
Well, maybe.
Hey man, I've had Russ on, and Russ Russ has no boundaries.
I know it. I know it.
Now, you know, we're not gonna. I don't want to hurt anybody here, but I mean, history's history. I mean, there's a reason.
Yeah, you know, there was Dave Will, and I love Dave, and we.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, I just you know, I think he on that record was like a fish out of water.
I felt for him. I always felt for Dave.
And so we had been just working hard. I mean, just singing. And did you ever work for Brown at all?
Just a little bit. Yeah. We only did one song with him. We had a lot of plans to work with Brown, and they never worked out. But
at that time, he was just rough on singers.
Yeah, I don't know that ever really changed.
I don't think it did. Yeah. But that was just his.
But that was great. I mean, he got great stuff. Yeah.
So just give you "Wings of Love" was the very first vocal that I cut, and I'd been in the studio some, not a lot, just custom records and things like that. So this is my first foray into having a budget and just we can work for a song for days.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to look back now, and there was no Pro Tools.
Do you remember the budget on that record?
Seems like it was around $350,000.
Wow, for '87.
Yeah,
incredible.
It was a lot.
It's incredible. Now, it makes sense because of the way it sounds.
And we went over budget.
No kidding. Oh, no kidding.
So it brings me to this.
Yeah.
It was a lot. It seems like that was the number I remember hearing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we had started tracking in L.A. and then that whole record is piecemealed. I mean, there's like Power of God was Rhett Lawrence did the program on it, and we brought it back to Nashville. My brother put guitars on it. Every song was different. There wasn't a tracking session per se, except when we tracked Paul Lime's drums on a few. Some of it was like Power of God was a drum program, I believe.
And that's got a huge drum thing in it.
Yeah. And so so it was done that way, and so we spent a lot of time in California working on it out there, and we were in Ocean Way and just living the life.
Yeah, I know that feeling. We got to do that on a couple records at the height of our career. We're literally flying all over the world recording and. You don't think about it until after it goes, did we really need to do that?
Right, though.
It sure was fun, though. I got some great memories. But,
I don't know. It adds to the creativity
it does.
of it.
You're right.
And the
Absolutely
moment of it.
Does.
And would it have been different? I mean, would it have been just as good? Maybe not.
No.
Because there's a vibe.
Yeah.
There's a vibe that, in stuff like that.
Quality costs money.
So
money and time.
It does.
Money and time. That's the only way to create something great.
So we had run out of money. Segue. We're back in Nashville, and so I was going to start the vocal of Wings of Love. Brown said, be at this certain studio. It was a studio 615 Productions, which was a jingle house, basically. And I, later on, I ended up singing jingles at that place, from time to time. And Jeff Balding was the engineer, and it was a 24-track Studer is what we were doing vocals on starting. And so I started at like 10 o'clock, working on the vocal in the morning, and sang till probably 2 or 3, just takes and mainly
2 or 3 a.m.
No, no, I'm not finished. Just in the afternoon.
Okay.
And Jeff didn't like what he was hearing back. What he was hearing going to tape was different to him coming back, and so we changed studios and went to Omni.
Oh, yeah.
And Brown said, go home, get a bite to eat, whatever, and come back in Omni at 7. So went to Omni, got there at 7, and we finished like at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
I sing that whole time.
Wow.
Just take it.
But you did. And see, that to me, that's the difference between someone who, and I work with vocalists all the time.
Sure.
I do a lot of coaching and helping with artists. And I'm like, you got to understand, you think you know how to sing, wait until you get in the studio with a real producer.
Right.
And you're singing all morning, all afternoon, and all night, and then do it again the next day.
Right.
And because that clock's ticking, and you'll find out if you're a pro or not.
Right.
And you better bring the tools with you, because it will. I mean, it can crush you. And I know a lot of friends that got crushed in the studio because they couldn't take the grind over and over. But you and I both know that sometimes that 2 a.m. vocal, when we've been beat to death, is the stuff that gets kept.
The emotion.
It's the stuff. Yeah, it's that emotion that comes out.
It's that thing inside you thinking, God, I'm dying here. And it comes out somehow. I just want to go lay down.
Yeah.
So and then that's the way a lot of those vocals work. And Brown was he was relentless.
Yeah. The one time we worked with Brown, we cut leads and BGVs. We started around 6 p.m. and finished around 5 a.m.
Right.
That next morning. And he was a machine, man.
And back in those days, that wasn't uncommon. I mean, people did that. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It was just crazy.
And then you're back out on the road.
Right.
It's not like you're just hanging out for 6 months making a record.
Right.
You got money's in the touring.
There was when I was doing the vocal of Power of God. This is a funny story. We were at Omni, and did you ever work in there?
Oh yeah, lots of records in
the
there.
big room out there.
They just closed, didn't it? Or they tore it down?
Just mowed it down. Which is sad.
Lots of memories there.
One of the first places. That's where we ended up with the vocal on Wings of Love was at Omni, my first vocal. And but we were doing the vocal of Power of God.
I'm going to bust out singing that song in a minute if you keep talking about it.
And I was doing the vocal of the Power of God, and we were still trying to figure out how to, the best way. Do we just get a take and work on that? Do we comp? We get several takes. So we had kind of, for me, because I never sing it the same way twice.
Oh wow.
I just. Especially at that point, I've gotten to where I can do that now.
Yeah.
But it is just something different every time. And so they figured out, what worked best for me was to get 7 or 8 tracks and comp.
Right.
I mean, maybe take one of those tracks and just really hone that in. And so, and Power of God, it stays at a B.
Yeah.
The whole song and up to,
man, you just go some places there. I'm just like, how
are
you doing this?
C sharp, and glancing off a D here and there. It's just high.
Yeah, and with your style of singing too, it's kind of right in here. It's that big
open
throat.
Yeah.
Which like it was again just like blowing my mind as a vocalist.
Yeah. There's a story about that too.
Okay.
But we.
I'm having a blast here, so you just keep talking, man.
But it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been singing all evening into the morning, and it was just Brown and I and Billy Whittington, or the engineer. And in Omni, where they had me sit up, and the control room was over to my left, where they were in the A room, and. So I just finished a take and was like, "Flow through me," and finished. And I looked over at Billy, and he's looking at Brown, and he looks back out at me, and I see him go. I know what he's saying. He goes, "Hey, Brown." Brown was asleep. Sitting at the console. And Billy goes, "Hey, Brown," and Brown he raises up and goes, "Let's get one more."
That's great. Give me one more.
Don't you want to listen to that one? No, let's just get one more. So anyway, that was a funny.
Oh man.
Funny moment. It wasn't funny then, but it's funny now.
Okay, well, let's move on. I literally could spend all day talking about that album.
Can I tell you what this is a little insight into how zany it was with Jimmy and I to a degree, especially when we were recording. We're doing background vocals together. So, like I said, we had run out of money, and Rick Kua had there's an Assembly of God church just north on Franklin Road, up on the right, and Rick was going to church there at the time, and he was working on a record. Sorry, my whiskers are tickling me, and he had a remote recording truck there, and he had one of the Sunday school rooms set up with a vocal. He was cutting his vocals there.
Yeah.
And of course, heard about that, and it sounded cheap. And so we went there, and we did a bunch of the background vocals on this year's model at that church.
Wow, that was the original mobile, what we do now.
Yeah.
I just cut my home studio and send it to you. And you do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. In a bus. Yeah. It was an old bus. Wow. The dude had the studio set up. So anyway, we went out there and did a bunch of background vocals, but it was just blankets wrapped around and had a little vocal booth set up there. And they had a camera, just so they could see us,
That was high tech back then.
It's for, we couldn't see them, but yeah, it's just a little, to see proximity of mic and what have you. So you can see what the singers are doing. Yeah. So, and this continued on into Free the Fire as well, but we would get, laughing about something and just lose it. Yeah. And just, 15 minutes later goes by and we're still laughing.
So is that where the beginning of Fallen came from? That's always been one of my favorite moments. And anybody that knows that record, is a fan of that record, that's the first thing they talk about is the beginning of, and then how it drops. And
well, I'm sorry, hit the back. I'll tell you what that is. That was at Ocean Way. And Keith Thomas and Jimmy Lee were working on the program for that song. And Capizios, everybody kind of wore the Capizios, their dance shoes, which is hilarious now. But Jim was like, "Hey, Keith, you still got your Capizios?" And then they were working on it was on a cassette tape. They were just as a work tape, and they just edited that and stuck it on the front of
it's just genius.
It's
just genius.
There's a lot of stuff. There was no walls. Nothing you couldn't do.
I love it. Well, we spent half the interview talking about that, and I'm happy about it. But I wanted.
Can I finish that? I'm
sorry.
Keep going. I want to finish, but tell you what, the laughter.
Yeah.
So we got our composure, and I said, okay, we're ready. We're good. I mean, we'd been laughing probably a good 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah. Just start to sing and then start laughing again. And I said, well, okay, we're good. There's nothing. Hey, guys, nothing. So we take our headphones off, walk out to the bus. Everyone was gone. They just left us in there.
We're not waiting around on this.
So what? So we get back out to the bus, and what do we do? So we're just hanging out, and a few minutes later, Arman's car comes pulling in. And he said, "We figured you were going to be a while, so we just went to Shoney's."
I love it.
All right, we can move on.
Oh, you bring up Shoney's, you're going to bring up a whole lot of other stories. You couldn't tour. The Shoney's were a godsend back in the day. Until it wasn't.
Right.
Did you ever stay at Shoney's in the Shoney's Inn?
Oh yeah, sure. Ooh. Oh my Lord.
Some of my worst experiences were staying in the Shoney's Inn. That was always like the last resort. If you couldn't find a place to stay and you just can't drive anymore,
right?
Shoney's was always available, but you're like,
you could always get a room.
Choice, there's a reason for that.
Exactly.
A reason for that. Well, so you went into Free the Fire, which you said kind of had to tone things back a little bit.
Yeah.
Was that a little bit of label pressure, or hey guys, we got?
It wasn't so much. It wasn't label pressure. the label wanted us to continue to do what we were doing.
Yeah.
In
Because it
fact,
sold. I mean, that record sold. This year's model sold pretty well.
it did pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
The label. And I'm going to get into some dirt. Not a lot. That's not dirt, but it's just what happened.
It's 40 years ago.
Yeah, no. The label came to Arman, and they wanted to, was talking to Arman about stepping down.
Him stepping down.
In management and basically putting somebody else with Jimmy Lee and I. And making a completely new thing out of the Imperials.
Interesting.
And moving forward with
that doesn't surprise me at all.
With a new generation of the Imperials. Dave Will, who barely sang on that record. In fact, he was supposed to sing Outlander.
Outlander.
Yeah, that was supposed to be Dave's song. I got a call late one night from Brown in the middle of all the vocal stuff, and I was in bed. He said, "Hey, I need you to come to the studio." I'm like, "What? And isn't Dave singing?" He's like, "Dave couldn't sing Outlander. Couldn't, just wasn't
grasping it.
Wasn't grasping it. I need you to come." So Brown sent him home and brought me back to sing the song.
That's happened for him a few times.
Sure.
Too. Yeah, it's just the way it goes.
Dave took that very personal and said,
"It is hard because it's a." Especially as you're getting older and you see all the new blood coming in, that's really difficult.
Sure.
I understand that completely.
But he refused to do another record with Brown. Said if Brown does another record, I won't stay. So his feelings were severely hurt. And I understand.
Sure.
I understand that.
Sure.
I mean, he'd been there for a long time at that point. And so there was a conscious effort to go, hey, let's maybe try to create from not the label, but from Arman and, the management, what have you. Let's take a step back and maybe do a record more in line with what One More Song for You or Priority, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's when Bill Schnee came into the picture.
Oh, wow.
That produced that record, Free the Fire. And so that was the deal.
Yeah.
With that. What
was the one part, you're going to laugh, the one part that sticks out to me on Free the Fire was Jimmy Lee's tune. I got a lot of things to do,
Oh, the boss?
Yeah, the boss. That was one of the wildest songs. Like, this is really left field, but I loved it. Oh, looking back on it now, I'm glad you guys did that song, but I remember hearing it back then just going, this is really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
We would all say that. It was kind of a buzz phrase on our bus was, I got a lot of things to do, Now, I'm definitely going to have Jimmy on at some point. We're going to talk about that. Again, core memories that make you who you are.
I will get into that then. But yeah, he wrote it. Supposedly about a kid he met at a show,
Yeah.
And talking to him, and he was doing that all the time. I mean, he would get out and just hang with the kids, and because he was 12 in his head anyway. So and I can't really say anything different because I was too. But yeah, that's the boss. Yeah, it was interesting.
Go back and listen, listeners. Go back and listen. It's
we do that song every night, though. I mean,
really?
and it was always it was always got a. It was I think that was the #1 song.
Was it really?
Yeah. It was a big song.
Wow.
And it spoke to a lot of it spoke to teenagers.
Sure.
So there was it hit a nerve. And I'm not sure
why.
It did well on radio, but I don't know. I mean, it might have been, but I don't remember.
Well, so then your journey with the Imperials ended. How did that take me through that?
Well, I did Free the Fire, and then we did. Jimmy left.
Yeah.
And when Jimmy left, I kind of
Who replaced Jimmy?
David Robertson.
Oh yeah, I remember David.
David, an amazing singer.
Yeah.
Amazing singer.
Yeah.
And but it was just way different for me. I remember the first time that I had to do a show without Jimmy, and because we were both playing bass in the band. We we took turns.
Oh, you take turns, okay.
You know.
I'm getting some Spinal Tap vibes here.
No, we didn't do Big Bottom. But I basically played bass on the things he didn't want to play bass on.
Yeah.
And so we came in, and I'm like, I don't want to play bass the whole night. I don't want to do that. So we had a bass player at that point. So my very first show with David was at Knott's Berry Farm, and I was living in West Palm Beach at the time. So I flew from West Palm to Knott's Berry Farm, plane delay in Atlanta. I literally got out of the van at the venue with the clothes I've been flying in all day long.
Wow.
And I was walking in the door, and they said, "He's here!" Ladies and gentlemen, the Imperials.
I've had a couple of instances like that as well. Yeah.
I walked on the stage with and there was David and no Jimmy. Nothing against David.
Yeah.
But it was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. You kind of felt like
it was rough.
Yeah. It's like a page had really turned for you.
Yeah. And I had to, and I didn't, but I felt like I had to carry the whole thing. And truthfully, David didn't really want to be an Imperial. Yeah. When we went to do that third record with him, he almost didn't go because we did it in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Changed producers.
Yeah.
I didn't really care. I mean, I hated the production on that record.
Yeah.
Personally.
It doesn't stand out.
But there were 5 number one songs on that record.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did great at radio, didn't sell great.
Yeah.
And toward the end of that era, I was ready to do something else. At that point, by the time I left the Imperials, I'd been on the road for 15 years. Wow. And I was just ready to get off the road. Yeah. And I was starting to write country songs, just my version of what that is, and I just wanted to do something different. The creativity of it. I love gospel music. Yeah. There's for me as a writer, there's a limitation to what you can say.
That's right.
And I didn't like to write about life things, and and really when we were doing records in those days, it wasn't. I mean, there was a lot of life in the Christian realm of what we wrote about, but it wasn't like worship records.
You could ask questions.
You could.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you could ask questions about life, and not that you're questioning God, but you're asking, what do we do here? Like, what happens if we do this? What you could dream a little bit. You could paint some scenarios of life,
which to me is where the ministry of helping other people through your music I think kind of disappeared to a degree. I mean, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but I can't tell you when Facebook happened, and I'll join, and I got so many messages from people that, man, I received the Lord going to one of your concerts. Yeah, and you want to, it was just. I was kind of blown away with that,
Because you close the chapter on that and you walk away. I did the same thing with For Him. I've said this so many times on this podcast, was that I didn't want to be associated with that anymore because I was a worship pastor. And I know you've got a story in that as well. Right. But I was a worship pastor for a long time. Right. And I'm like, this is what God's doing now. And what he did back then, I don't know. But then the messages start coming with social media and how many people were saved, or how many, I don't know, wild stories of people's lives being hugely affected by the music we did back then.
Yeah. So, it all kind of changed for me. I wanted to do something different. I was writing country songs. I got off the road. I was actually a worship leader at church in West Palm. I was doing that while I was with the Imperials. I wasn't there all the time, but they brought me in to just kind of help with the music department and all that. And so I just got off the road and did that for a good while, and would come to Nashville and sing sessions and stuff. And and during that period when I sang on Baby Baby and was in town, just happened to be here, And, so I was still had my hands in a lot of stuff. I just wasn't on the road.
Yeah.
And so
But you had a good name in Nashville. Like you were.
Sure.
Like you were you're on everybody's Rolodex.
I was working a lot.
Yeah.
And come into town and just work, and then go back. And I don't know. I got a country publishing deal, and I wanted to do a country record, which I know that's bizarre, but
well, the two are closely connected. Again, it's
well, it is for me. It's more about my roots, where I grew up.
Right.
I mean, there was a very diverse thing in my family. My dad, I grew up singing in church, yes. And the same with my mom and dad. My dad always had a country band or a bluegrass band. He was always, and that's, I as a kid was playing bass in his bluegrass bands, and, stuff like that. And so then Tom and I had rock bands when we got in high school. And, it was just, there was never any, I want you got to listen to, there was never any, there were no limits really to what we could do musically in our household.
Well, and Tom was everywhere.
Yeah.
Like he was playing for everybody.
Oh, and that
still is.
Still, yeah. He's in Texas right now doing a jazz record.
Wow.
With Vinny Caliuta and
no way.
What's the bass player? Patitucci.
Wow.
Yeah, he's working with those guys as we speak.
Incredible.
But yeah, I don't know, where were we?
Well, you leave the Imperials, you're going out to your own thing, you start writing country music.
Yeah.
And I know about Chester White, like I know,
right.
I love, I love Billy Simon.
Okay,
and he's been on the podcast, great stories there, and he's been such a big part of our lives and our career.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think he wrote like 11 songs for us that we cut, and you can't tell the story about For Him without telling the story of Billy Simon,
right.
And it's just everything's intertwined.
Right.
But so when did we tour together? That was
early 94, maybe 95, something like that.
I was thinking maybe late 95, 96. So you came out with Bruce Carroll.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. But
but that's where I first met you.
Yeah, it would have been that. Yeah,
that's where I first met you,
right.
And was able to spend a little bit of time with you, and just, I don't know, there's probably a lot of hero worship going on there. Just like, wow, I'm literally on the bus. The same thing I did with Russ when Russ came out and toured with us a little bit. Like, I can't believe I'm on the bus with Russ and hearing those stories. And then again, I can't believe I'm on the bus with Ron, whose music and voice shaped a lot of who I am and gave me some things to shoot for as a vocalist. And you've always just been a hero of mine. I mean, we're not done with the conversation. Sorry, I'm kind of getting off on that a little bit, but.
I remember. I remember when I met you and you told me that.
I hope we were nice.
No.
We were nice to you.
Oh, you guys were hilarious, man.
Oh, good.
Whew. Marty, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Marty makes me laugh more than anity in the
hilarious.
world. Oh, yeah.
Hilarious. But but I even remember you told me that. And I'm like, really?
Shouldn't have been a surprise.
But I'm honored by that. Thank you.
Yeah. But you've just had a rich career of really playing with a lot of great musicians, being on a lot of records, and like when you look at the body of your career, what do you feel like has been your major contribution to the music industry?
Well, I guess
maybe an unfair question, but I think we all have something we can look back on and go, that's what I've done.
Yeah.
That's what I leave behind.
The body of work with the Imperials, obviously. My country career was less than fantastic. I had a record before we did the Chester White with a band called the Buffalo Club.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a top 10 song with that, and then the band broke up, and that's just
which bands do.
Which, it's tough.
Yeah.
The label folded and was like, here we are. So...
well, I know you got into worship quite a bit. Like you were at
You know
several
what?
churches, and so,
I was the unreluctant worship pastor.
Me too, man. I was always what everybody said, oh, you're going to go do that. I'm like, no, I'm not. Quit pushing me into it.
And how all that started, I was living in West Palm, Jupiter, actually, is where I was living. And there was a church meeting in a movie theater called Palm Beach Community Church.
Yeah. Why were you living in that area?
You know what? My wife was from not far from there, and Nashville's a tough town for spouses.
Yeah. It is.
And it's road musicians, you know. And
I agree.
I just wanted to get out of Nashville for family sake. And you know, when I was on the road, she was there close to her family.
Yeah.
I loved Florida.
Yeah.
I love
Why
Florida.
not?
Yeah. And so we lived there, and I would fly to Nashville and get on the bus and fly home.
Yeah. The only drag about that, because I lived in Mobile forever and then Orlando for a while, and it does add time to your commute. You don't just get off the bus and drive to your house. And
Right.
Yeah, like you said, it's more time flying to meet the bus, getting on the bus, and then flying home after that.
And for me too, just my cronies where I lived there knew nothing about the music industry.
Isn't that refreshing, isn't it?
It's totally refreshing. Yeah. And I've always, for some reason, I've always relished in that, being around people that know nothing about. When I was with the Imperials, there were times I just felt like I was just a phone call away from, hey, can you come sing on something? Hey, yeah, and or first, and I would cherish that now.
Yeah. the things we didn't want, we do want.
Yeah, I just got I just never felt like I got away from it.
Sure.
And I needed.
I feel that. Yeah.
And my wife and I were going to Christchurch at the time, and we would come in from singing all weekend, and I love Christchurch choir. I mean, especially back in those days, you know. I'm like, man, I've been singing. I don't want to hear a choir sing for 45 minutes. You know? And I mean, it just is.
My wife and I would purposely go late to worship.
Right.
When we had an opportunity to go to church, just because I'm like, I kind of need a break from it, and also, what we've been doing on the road is way better. I mean, I was judgy about it too, just going, I'm going to find everything wrong with this, and I can't. It's not life-giving to me.
Well, they called me, the Palm Beach Community Church called me, hey, our worship pastor is going to be out this week, and we know you live in the area. Could you just come and do some songs or tracks and stuff? I'm sure. Yeah, that was just down the street from where I lived. So, this was kind of an affirmation for me. Not that they even were looking for a worship pastor at that point. But I walked in, and there were a new church meeting in a movie theater. And I walked in, and the theater that they were, where the movie was going to be playing that afternoon, the movie was Spaceballs. I'm like, I'm home. So anyway, I did that, and then the music pastor had stepped down, and they said, "Man, could you come and help us?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm on the road quite a bit. Yeah, just come and help us, you know." And so I was calling singers, and here's the track I want you to go get. You know, it was back in those days, and so that's how I ended up being there. And then when I got off the road, I was there full time on staff until I went back, started commuting back and forth to Nashville as a writer. Yeah. And then in the, I guess, late 90s, was at a church in Franklin that was meeting in the factory.
I realized the factory had been around that long.
Oh, it's been around forever.
Yeah.
The church was Cross Point.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm sorry, Crossroads.
Okay.
Crossroads Community Church.
Yeah.
And this was before Cross Point and all that. And I was there, I kind of just stepped in and helped out. Music pastor had stepped down. Yeah. And I was attending there. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I can help out, you know. And I ended up doing that for a couple of years. And then that's when we started Chester White.
Okay.
And so I stepped because we were in the throes of all that. And
so you'd stayed in touch with Jimmy Lee.
Oh, yeah.
All through all of that. You know, obviously he went on and did a lot of producing and writing, and he was everywhere.
Right. Still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Playing on everybody's records, you know. And we talk from time to time. He and Billy are pretty tight at the hip, you know, have been. My relationship with Jimmy is these days is just I'll get a crazy meme of some sort, and I'll respond and never
what
hear
friends
anything
do.
from him.
Yeah, but that's what friends do these days. That's pretty much all my wife and I do on the phone is send memes back and forth.
Right.
It's never anything else.
But I've been at the church where I'm at now. I've been 14 years.
Wow.
1st of August.
Wow.
And it's evolved and changed since I've been
still
there.
serving in worship?
Yeah.
Wow.
Band leader, worship leader.
That's amazing. I love that.
And yeah.
Wow.
I'm there on Sundays, and that's basically kind of what I do. There's it's the Minnicks who are the family. Johnny Minnick was the pastor when I started. His son now has the church, so I've been there longer than the pastor has been. Not really, but kind of.
Yeah. I love coming and leading worship. I have some friends that'll have me come lead worship at their churches here in Nashville when I'm around, and and you walk in and there's John Hammond on, playing drums, and, there's David Hamilton over there playing keys, and it's just like, wow, this is really cool because it's not just great musicians on stage. You're friends from those eras. It's kind of like, it's kind of, I use this analogy a lot, but it's kind of like the last episode of Lost.
Right.
All these people that had all these adventures with back in the day, you all come together in the church and you're just hanging out together.
Right.
And it's a different thing. I know when I first started leading worship, the thing that I think it took me a while to get there for this, but it was a place where I could go and not have to be all hyped up and perfect and singing for my life, because that's all I felt that on the road. You're singing for your life every night because you can't afford to have 2 or 3 bad nights in a row,
right?
Because you want people to buy your product, and you want the band to keep hiring you, and you want the group to stay together, and so there's pressure to keep momentum going on the road. But you can come to church and it's a little bit different, but you have to wean yourself off of it.
Right.
You have to go, take a breath. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just has to be genuine, but yet the skill set is still useful here.
Right.
And that's what I found as a worship pastor.
There's aspects of it that I love. Mm-hmm. There's aspects of it that I don't.
Well, that's a whole other podcast too.
It is, and that's just it's personal stuff with me. I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm not looking to go anywhere. I mean, they're fantastic to me, and they've become family. Yeah. I've watched pastors' kids grow up. They were literally little kids. Now his son is our guitar player.
Wow.
In the band.
That's so
great. Cool. And his other son is a drummer, not our main drummer, but there's so it's more of a family to me, but I don't know. I've been there for a good while.
And then what are you doing as far as in your music career away from the church? Like, tell me where you are right now and what you're doing, because I see you everywhere. I sat down with Billy Smiley and did an episode with him. Okay. Yeah, and he gave me your number.
Oh,
and
that's
I'm like,
right.
oh man, I got to have Ron on because I heard the River Criers.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, I haven't heard a record this good coming from this era of Christian music in forever. I'm like, this is going to be my jam for the next couple of years. He gave me like just the files, which the whole thing's not out yet, but just to hear you in your element again and the way the songs are written and produced, I'm like, this is what. And of course, Billy's like, I don't know where the audience is for this.
Right, we don't. We're trying to figure that out right now.
For me, it's just, again, I'm getting chills just talking about some of those early records. It's just so fun and so satisfying to hear you guys do this again.
If that's a whole funny story in itself, how it even developed. But I was working for Billy, singing some background vocals on something he was producing, and this is a few years ago. And I stepped out of the vocal booth and walked in after we'd finished, and he says, "Hey man, let's start a band."
You mean the fourth band you're in right now?
And I looked at him and said, "Why would you want to do that? Start a band? What would dude? We're old. Want to be in a band?" And he said, "No, really. Let's I'm right." I'm like, "Okay." And I walked away that night and went home and it's out of my head. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's Billy. And a couple weeks later, or maybe the next week, he calls him and say, hey, and we were talking about guys we could have in the group. You know, who could we get to do that? And he called me the next week. Hey, I got the rest of the guys for the band. I'm like, what band?
He's like, the one you signed up for, don't you remember?
So we just kind of got together and started writing tunes, you know, and that's where it kind of came from. And then, you know, Dan and Matt Nelson and Steve.
Dan sounds great.
Dan's
Man, oh, just
such a good
so
singer.
good.
He's got a cool voice.
Yeah, it's good to hear him again too.
Yeah. And it's so hey, we're just having fun, you know, and I'm doing my we're playing Friday night, in fact, or the Egomaniacs. Just
Which every time I come to town, that's all I hear about is Egomaniacs. I need to see a show sometime.
When you going home?
Well, I go home tomorrow.
Oh, see, there's the problem right there.
Yeah, I know. That's why I should move to Nashville, right?
No, it's not.
Well, not in this economy, at least.
Oh man.
No, I really do. That's on my bucket list. Because I
we've
look
been
at the
hey
lineup.
this Friday night is our 10th year.
Wow,
We've been doing. I was like, what, really?
that's so cool.
And it's been so much. It's I'm a huge Don Henley fan. I mean, from the especially writing aspect, his style of writing, just and when that End of the Innocence record came out,
I think it's one of the best records ever made.
That just it changed my world, man. And as far as from a writer and truthfully,
Heart of the Matter is like I think one of the best pop songs ever written.
Oh, it's And so we, Tom and I were doing Soul Cages, which was a police sting band.
Yeah.
And, and we were always played at 3rd and Lindsley, which when we first started doing that was still like 150, 200 seat crammed in the place. It was very small. And then and we were packing that out. But when they made the auditorium like a 500 seat auditorium, and we couldn't get anybody out to see that show. And it's Sting and it's the Police. It's pretty involved. It's real similar to going to see a jazz band.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, the craziest thing in my mind is seeing somebody play bass and sing.
Yeah,
I can't play drums because I can't make my arms and legs do two different things or four different things. It blows my mind even more to know what you got to do on bass and sing and the different rhythms that are going on. I just blows my mind. It's and then Sting is like the Sting and or who's the lead singer and bass player for Level 42? That
guy.
Yeah,
I can't.
That's just like I.
Yeah,
I it's never dream of doing
and
that.
There's some people that are just natural at it.
Yeah.
Me, I really have to. I have to get into cruise control on the bass. I've got a thing that I play.
So it's kind of like one's got to come first.
Yeah.
It's like they can't be both happening at a high level at the same time.
Well, no,
but I mean, you obviously you can do it, but
you got it's. Well, it depends on the song.
I'm sure it's a skill set. You have to.
It depends on the song for me. And there's some of that's like, I hung my head, which is an odd meter.
5 or
5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. 5 or 7.
Yeah.
We did, and so that stuff. It just, I get into a pattern, and I'm playing that pattern. And that's then trying to sing around it. And if you see Sting live, he doesn't do everything that he does in records.
Yeah,
and I've heard him talk about it. I mean, it's rhythmically with what he's singing, and I do adjust. You almost have to.
Yeah.
If you're pushing with your vocal and the bass is not, you just some guy.
That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah,
no,
it's mind blowing to me.
But the Eagles is a totally different thing.
Yeah. I don't play bass in that.
And so did you? Oh, so you don't. So do you just sing or do you?
I play guitar.
Guitar, okay.
Yeah. my brother plays guitar. I'm playing some acoustic and some rhythm, electric stuff. And we got 3 guitar players.
Yeah. So did you and Tom start Egomaniacs?
We did. Oh, I was going to say we couldn't. So we're
So you couldn't
get
fill
a
up
crowd.
500 seats. Yeah.
So we. I digressed again. Tom called me one and says, "Man, let's do it. Let's do an Eagles, maybe Don Henley tribute band." I'm like, that'd be cool. But really, I was never an Eagles fan per se.
I'm kind of with you.
I kind of got into the Eagles back door through Don Henley's music.
Yeah, I totally
and
agree.
the same way with the Police. I never was a Police fan per se.
Yeah.
Loved Sting. But his music, and then I kind of got into.
I love Synchronicity, but I didn't go back and get the others until way down later in Sting's career.
Same way. And so, Tom got to doing some research, and the Eagles' music is like the most requested music ever. Period. I mean, it's just like Eagles.
And it speaks to your country roots.
It speaks to Nashville.
In Nashville, yes. Right.
So the very first show we played, before we had anybody even heard the band, and the band's great. It's it's Tom, it's Paul Lime, it's all these people, Larry Hall, and it's just a great band. Scott Sheriff, and Bonnie
Bonnie's a part of that, yeah.
And so I went back to Nellie, who was a gentleman that runs the door at 3rd and Lindsley, that first show. I said, I need to put a couple of people on the guest list. She goes, how many do you have? I'm like,
this has never been a problem before.
Why? He goes, well, the show's sold out. I'm like, it is?
Wow.
So our first show, before anybody heard the band, which just speaks to the music.
Yeah, it does.
Nobody was doing that then, and it was sold out. And probably about 75% of our shows are sold out. We went and played in, where were we recently? A little theater in Cookville, 500 or 600 seat, and sold it out.
Wow.
It's just, it speaks to the music. We try to do it, justice.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I
Well,
enjoy
one of
it.
these days, I really am. Next trip, I'm going to make sure you guys are around and I can come see you, and you got to put me on the guest list.
Sure.
It's not sold out.
You can come backstage too, Andy.
Yay! That's my thing. When you do this for so long, you don't want to stand in line. You don't know about it. I know you're the same way. You're not going to go to a show unless you really find out if you know somebody on that tour.
I probably won't go to it then.
I love going to shows now. I used to not. When we were touring, man, I was just like, there's no way you can get me out to a show.
Right.
I'm just so.
I don't remember the last.
I love it. I'm trying to see people before they pass. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's kind of a.
Yeah, that's gotten to that.
If somebody's coming by and they're in their 70s or 80s, I'm going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the last show I went to be honest with you.
Well, again, if you're still working and doing shows, I get that. I totally get it. But
yeah, I don't know, man. I think maybe I don't know.
You trying to remember the last show you went to?
Yeah, I went to a show with my daughter. She wanted to go see these bands. The Chainsmokers was one of them. Which blew my mind.
Oh, really? I was going to say.
Not in a great way.
Oh.
I mean, they were incredible, but everything was on tape.
Yeah.
It was just these two guys, and I'm like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
The arena was packed out.
Yeah.
I'm like, for real?
Yeah.
Some music has changed so much.
It has. I'll tell you one place you can go, though, and I love to go to Las Vegas and watch shows. That's one of my favorite things to do. Is go have dinner and watch a show in Vegas.
Wow.
And my wife and I go all the time. And you can go back and really see some great acts.
Right.
And again, I'm trying to, emotionally go on an emotional tour of seeing all these bands that were so pivotal for me growing up. And this is a pivotal moment for me. And I'll close it out with this, is that it's a pivotal moment for me to sit down with you. It's cathartic for me.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a chance for me to say thank you to someone whose voice made such an impact in my life, showed me what was possible with that type of voice and that type of music and the emotion and the range and just to sit here with you And you might ask me how old you are?
I'm going to be 66 this fall.
No way, man.
Isn't that crazy?
Goals, brother. I'm 58. And
I remember when I was 58.
I have guys that I do life with that are just, turning 45. I'm like, to be 45 again.
Oh, I know
it.
I know it.
But age is just a number, right? It's all relative until we try to get from these chairs. And we
when I turned 68, so somebody said, it's just a number. I said, yeah, but it's a really big number.
It's a big number, right? Well, but again, to see what you're doing, hear how good you are, the opportunities you're having, and you're not slowing down. I'm just like, man, thank you. Thank you for being you. And I know you're just living your life and doing what's in front of you. But I'll just say this on behalf of every other vocalist out there that's making a living still. Thank you for being a trailblazer, for never giving up, for always reinventing yourself, and for not quitting. Because why?
Yeah.
This is the most singing for me is the most life-giving thing. Besides being around my kids and grandkids, it's the most life-giving thing that I can do.
For me, being a singer is something that I always wanted to do from a little kid. I mean, I played bass and drums, but being a singer, I always wanted to be a singer. I think in the 5th grade, they built a new building at the school, and we had a little cornerstone thing. They were going to open this time capsule.
Yeah.
And I remember I put in that, what is your goal in 10 years? What do you want to, I want to be singing in a quartet. Wow. Which I wouldn't want to do that for nothing. Which is funny, I'm still, the last couple of years I've been doing a little things every now and then with Paul Smith and
nice.
And just some.
I think I've seen that on Facebook. Yeah.
Just I'm like, I've never aspired to be an Imperial again, but it's just fun. We're going, paying tribute to some, particularly for Paul and I, just, that's what kind of brought it to reality, music to reality for us, is being able to be in the Imperials, and so it's for us. It's just kind of go out and pay some tribute to to that fine name, the Imperials, and everybody that's been there. We don't do it a lot. I don't want to do it a lot.
Well, man, again, I'm a fan, and I'm glad to call you a friend.
Thank you.
And let's stay in contact.
Absolutely.
I would love to just continue to, see how you're doing. And again, I'm drafting behind you. So thank you for that.
I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. Thank you. And it's just fun. It's just fun to sit and talk. I hope some of it's keepable.
Yeah, it all is. I'm not cutting anything out.